Today we're going to teach you how to plant a containerized tree. When you're planting a tree, you're planting a living thing, so I assume you want it to survive. Trees need a few basic elements for their survival. Nutrient-rich soil for the roots to grow into, sunlight for the leaves to photosynthesize and make food, and water. Provide those elements and your tree should survive, providing you follow proper planting procedures. The first question to ask yourself is, what function would you like the tree to serve? Would you like shade for your home or deck? Possibly a privacy hedge? Or feed for migrating songbirds? Either way, function defines the space. Once you've decided on the space, then you need to make sure that the tree is going to fit in that space. Once the tree reaches its mature size, so you'll find the information on your tag indicating the projected mature size of the tree, as well as the exposure to sunlight. The tree needs sunlight. Some trees need more than others, so an important consideration. Utility lines as well. Don't plant under utility lines that are going to be a maintenance issue in the future. And almost most important in the prairies is drainage. Make sure the soil in the planting site is well drained. Too much water, the tree roots drowned. Too much water, too long, not good. So once you've decided on the spot, now it's time to put a shovel in the ground and dig. But before you do that, call your utilities for clearance. Not all planting sites are created equal. In old communities, they didn't strip the topsoil. The old topsoil is still there. In new communities, the topsoil has been stripped. So you have to follow a different procedure with new communities. We're going to start out with the old communities, and then we'll highlight the difference with the new communities later. The planting hole needs to be 2 to 3 times the size of the root ball in its width. Its depth needs to be at the first lateral root on the tree. And we find that by pulling out the tree. This tree's been in a container for quite some time. Anyways, don't assume that the finished grade of the soil coming out of the container is to be grade. It's not. You look for the first structural root that comes off, and here it is right here. That's going to be the finished grade. Often people like to cover the root, bring it up to the grafting scar here. Not the case. You want to have the finished grade at the first lateral root. Now it's time to put a hole in the ground. Not all planting sites are created equal. In older communities, the topsoil was not stripped and removed from the community. In new communities, that's common practice. So we follow a bit of a different procedure. We're going to start with the old community. Your planting hole, which we've dug already, needs to be 2 to 3 times the size of the root ball. The depth of the hole needs to be at the first structural root on the plant. So where it comes off at the first structural root, that needs to be our finished grade. So when digging the hole, we need to measure. We'll use a shovel, a good tool for a gardener, and that is about 2 inches below the top lip of the shovel. And we dug the hole, we're about 2 inches from the top. We set the tree in, and that's our finished grade. The other thing we encountered when we first pulled this out of the container was that it has obviously been in the container for quite some time, and the roots were girdled and growing in a circle. So we teased these roots out. We need to do that in order for the tree roots to grow out into the new soil. Otherwise, if you left them in that tight pattern, they would grow circularly and eventually girdle and kill the tree. The soil that we remove from the planting hole becomes the replacement soil. Some people think it's a good idea to add new soil. Not so. If you add new soil, the tree will often grow the roots in that easy, nice, loamy soil. Really nice to grow into. And the same thing will happen. It grows in a girdling pattern. We want to encourage these new roots now to grow into this soil, because when this tree is mature, these tree roots are going to be 2 to 3 times the height of this tree. So the backfill soil is the soil that we replace back into the hole. So let's do that now. All right, let's finish this backfilling. So let's gently tamp down the soil. The tree is nice and firm in its spot. We've teased out those roots. And we're planting it at a depth of that first lateral root. So our finish grade, as you can see, is just at the top of that first structural root. Soil is nicely tamped. And we're not going to replace this sod because we don't want grass growing around the base of the tree. We're going to replace it with wood mulch. We'll get to that in a minute. So we've emphasized the importance of planting at the grade of the first structural root, and why is that important? It's critical. The plants have not developed to have grade up against their trunk. Planting trees too deep and piling dirt, mulch, or rock up against the base of the tree higher than that first structural root will result in stress for the tree, and in my opinion is the leading cause of tree mortality on newly planted trees. Most trees are planted too deep, and that is a shame. So next step, we've got the soil packed, the tree's in place, it's nice and firm. In my opinion, this tree doesn't need to be staked. It's better not to stake them if they can hold their own. If you do stake the tree for protection, or if you do stake the tree for support, stake the tree for no more than 2 years, because it's critical that the tree grows its wood taper without support so it can grow a strong trunk. A tree that's staked for too long will grow poor wood taper on the trunk. What do I put over top of the root zone area? Don't put rock. Rock does nothing to improve the structure of the soil. Don't put down fabric. It prevents the diversity of the soil. It prevents the microorganisms from migrating up into the litter layer in the soil. The best thing to top your newly planted tree off with is natural wood mulch. A layer of about 2, 3, 4 inches. Replenish it annually and increase the size of it as the tree grows into its space. Wood mulch on top of soil is the best thing you can do to build nutrient-rich soil. You do not need to fertilize your trees. You use wood mulch, and that whole nutrient cycling that will occur will improve your soil structure, will improve your biodiversity of your soil. It will make healthy soil. So that's what we're going to do next. So I've got a nice layer of mulch now, a few inches thick. I'm going to replenish it regularly. I'm not going to allow anybody to use leaf blowers in my mulch bed because it blows all the organic matter away from the tree. If you've got to be a little more tidy underneath here, don't. Let it be a little messy. Let a little bit of litter collect. The mulch keeps the soil cool. It results in nutrient cycling. So it builds good soil. So it's the best thing you can do. Well, now that it's planted properly at the right depth with a good amount of good soil to grow into, you've got it covered in mulch. The next best thing and the lifesaver for the tree, I tell my clients this all the time, if you had money to spend on one thing and one thing only, what is it? Water. Don't let these things dry out. So a newly planted tree needs to be deeply watered at least twice per week for the first few years. And then a good gardener just pays attention to the soil. If we're not getting enough rain, water. Watering the plant right after being planted will help settle the soil as well. So a really heavy watering is going to help settle that soil. So good luck, buddy. Well, we've got our tree successfully planted. In our neighborhood, we've got deer. And if we don't protect our trees during the winter, they won't survive. The deer will browse them. So here's an example of a deer guard that we need in Charleswood. Maybe not all neighborhoods need that kind of protection, but we do here. So here we are. We got 2 buddies that are going to produce fruit for us for years to come. Yeehaw! We said at the beginning, not all planting sites are created equal. In the newer communities, where the topsoil has been removed and fill soil has been added, you'll dig into your soil and the first 6 inches or so is black, and then you get into this really heavy clay soil. If you were to dig a hole into that heavy clay soil, imagine when that hole fills with water. That water moves slow through the clay. Therefore, that clay acts like a subterranean bowl that actually holds water and is very, very detrimental to the tree. These are examples of trees that were planted too deep into clay. You see the root growth that comes out from underneath. Here's the first structural root and buttress root of the tree. The soil level should have been about here. In fact, it was here when we found the tree. You see the way the roots have grown up and out to try and get into a proper medium for which to survive. So you don't dig into the clay. Keep the clay there. We're going to have to set the tree in at that point, and we're going to then have to make adjustments to finish grade to accommodate. So here's our tree. Here's where we want our finish grade to be. So we're going to have to berm this area up and fill it with soil. So first soil that we're going to use is what we dug out of the hole. Not much soil because it's not a very deep hole. And then we're going to have to add some additional soil to it. So let's get to the backfilling. As we said in the initial instruction, you want to use your original soil as your backfill soil. We wouldn't want to replace this with new soil. We have to add new soil because we'll need more volume, but we wouldn't want to replace it. We want to use the original soil as our main backfill soil so the tree roots are used to the type of soil that they're supposed to be growing into. So now we have no other choice but to add some new soil just to build up the volume. Now we want to pull it back, reveal that first structural root right there, and just taper out the soil. In an application like this, the bigger the berm, the better. So the more soil you can add, the better. So we could technically use probably another bag or two of soil just to fill this a little more. Again, we're not bringing the soil up any higher than that first lateral root, that first structural root. You can be fooled sometimes, so the tree can put out what's called adventitious shoots, little spindly ones if the grade has been too high in the planter. But you want to look for that first substantial structural root, and that's our measure of grade. So here we are. We have planted a tree in a development that had all of its topsoil stripped before the development was built. But if you do it this way and don't dig into the soil, or into the clay rather, here's another example of a tree trying to grow out of the clay. Don't dig into the clay. Berm the tree up rather than dig into the clay. We'll top it off with our mulch. Leading cause of tree mortality in new developments: trees planted too deep into the soil, into the clay soil. In heavy rains, or even just through irrigation, that clay soil, or clay planting bowl as we refer to it, doesn't allow water to drain out fast, and it holds and is trapped inside that planting hole. And the trees will eventually, in many cases, drown. So here we are. We've got our new little friend there, and he's going to enjoy a good life here. You know, it's once been said that the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. So let's not waste any time. And we're living in a time where hope is important, and if I was to summarize the planting of a tree in one phrase or one word, I would say it's hope. And so we hope our little friend provides fruit for this complex for many years to come. Thank you for listening to our tutorial.